Hello, everybody. This is Noah and John, and we are from UrbanDigs, and it is Monday, so you're going to get your Brooklyn weekly market update. John, let's get right to it. I'm looking at Brooklyn supply. It looks like it went up for the first time in a while, a little bit, 2764. Show me that chart.
That's right. That's a nearly 5% increase. And then again, we're looking at actively listed supply here in Brooklyn. But it's interesting to note, Noah, that's one of the bigger jumps we've seen this year. And we've had some that have been slightly higher on a week-to-week basis, but finally, perhaps finally, Brooklyn supply is sort of coming alive here.
Yeah, that's right. Actively updated supply. We're not looking at the stale stuff that's been on, that's not been updated by the brokers. So yeah, this is interesting. Is it a bunch of new stuff coming on? Is it stuff that's coming off market, coming back on? I don't know. We'll take a look at those weeklies in a second. Let's move over to Brooklyn demand, pending sales, 3,427. Johnny, show me that chart.
Yeah, so that's actually a slight drop from last week, 0.6%. Now to the downside, if you want to mark that down in your sketchbook at home. It's interesting to look at the curve of Brooklyn demand and compare it to where we were last year, because Brooklyn has been trending above last year's numbers in terms of the demand side for pretty much the entirety of this year. But right now it's right on the cusp of being slightly below where it was last year. Yeah. Now, the demand curve for Brooklyn last year just kind of kept accelerating into the summer. This one, Noah, looks like it looks toppy here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're a buyer or a renter in Brooklyn right now, they're not feeling good. You're not feeling it right now. But, relative to it, it's going to be hard to sustain these levels. I'm going to stand by my New York City sugar rush piece that I put out there on UrbanDigs in the premium reports section right there. I think this is a sugar thing going on, and it's going to lull out as we get into summer. But for now, it's hanging. 1 week is not a trend. So this has to fall a lot more for us to notice any meaningful difference in what's going on in Brooklyn right now. And I just want to say, given where this went, how far it went, these kind of little moves, yeah, this is noise to me until I see something further. Let's go on to the weekly, see what's gone over there in Brooklyn. 307 things in terms of supply in 1 week. Johnny, show me that chart.
Yes, that's up 2%. So you talk about 1 week does not a trend make. Now we've got 3 weeks in a row in which Brooklyn weekly new actives have been over 300. That's a great sign for this market, which has been starved of supply for the longest time. So that's a sign of good things to come. But again, we still want to see those contract signs come in as well.
Yeah, let's go take a look at those contract signs. I look in the last 1 week, I see 204 things that look like a tick down. Johnny, show me that chart.
It is a tick down, Noah, and this is sort of when we talk about Brooklyn looking toppy, this is the kind of thing that we're looking at. So yeah, this week is lower than the week before, which is lower than the week before that. So we've seen now a few weeks of gradually declining contract sign numbers on a weekly level. Yeah. And notably, when we're talking about how the demand curve has sort of gotten, we talk about year over year, it's sort of approaching to the downside what it was looking like last year. Now we've been, for the last 4 weeks, we've been below the weekly contract signs in Brooklyn for last year. So I'm reiterating my call that Brooklyn looks a little bit toppy here heading into the summer. But again, it could just be the end of the busy season. I mean, this is the time when things start peaking and then winding down. So maybe Brooklyn has seen the peak and it's just sort of, cooling off ever so slightly here.
But I think that's why we have our feelings here, Johnny. And again, you're feeling Brooklyn's toppy. I have this feeling right over here, the sugar high for New York City markets, right? There's some macro mixed in there as to why I feel like what's going on over there, and explaining the activity now and how I don't know if it's going to last. And looking at these numbers, I mean, listen, if you're watching this show, you are ahead of the curve. Okay, you are way ahead of the curve. So now this is now the third, fourth week of something happening. We got to keep an eye on this, right? We got to keep an eye on this because that's what happens. You see it in real time and you got to kind of go past the noise. Maybe there is a trend. I mean, if something is really happening, this 204 number for contract signed right over here is going to fall. And again, it's going to fall notably. And it doesn't really happen yet, but it's starting. So it's interesting. John, let's shift over to price cuts. All right. I want to continue the conversation that we had in Manhattan to today. And this is Brooklyn price cuts. And when I look at what's going on in the Brooklyn general apartment market, the blue bar is showing you the number of price cuts. The red line is showing you the median price cut percentage, just over 3%. There's no real uptick in number of cuts. Sellers are just, things are moving.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me is, if you look at where we basically had a few weeks now, basically a month of demand on a weekly level, slightly lower. And when you look at this, price cuts, they're not up. Why is that? Well, because there's so few supply, frankly, still that Brooklyn is still first of all, both of these markets are amazingly transactional at this point, but there's just been such a lack of supply rather, that it's been pushing the buyers to sign contracts, and sellers really have not had a need to cut their prices. And, again, it's interesting to see that even as supply kicks up, demand cools a little bit, we're not seeing that in the price cuts just yet.
Yeah. I mean, this is a sign of a tight market. This is a sign of a tight market. It's a tight market. There's a bid, there's an ask. That spread is minimal. It's a narrow spread. And let's shift to townhouses. Let's shift to town. Look at the number of price cuts for townhouses is going down, right? But the median percentage cut is going up. And when I say going up, it's going from 4% to 5%. It's going up, 100 basis points. There's just not a lot of price reductions going on in Brooklyn townhouses right now. And again, if I'm a buyer, this is not really what I want to see. But you're getting an idea of what sellers are reducing. It's 4 to 5%. So that's at least some information.
Right. And again, if we start thinking about perhaps a summer slowdown, what is this chart going to look like come June, July, even August? And we could start seeing noticeable price cuts. But honestly, I don't know if we're going to see that red line go much higher here, Noah, just simply because the demand for Brooklyn has remained so strong that if there are price cuts, they're just going to get snapped up quickly.
Yeah, and let's just define summer slowdown, what we're talking about here. We are, and by no means saying that this market is going to have a crash or anything like that. That is not what we're saying. We're saying we got a seasonal, the seasonal slowdown, which always happens every single year. Combine that with the fact that interest rates have surged. There's probably been a demand pull for buyers. And you look at the fact that our markets are not, irrationally priced. When you think about what they've done over the last 3 years, we've just kind of made up the COVID discount. We didn't go up 30, 40%.
Right.
And you put all those factors in play and you think about where we might be in a couple of months, stock market volatility, the negative wealth destruction going on with the stock market volatility, all this stuff leads me to believe that, you're right. We're going to have a summer lull. So that does not mean, you have to understand, rising inventory, sure, right? Demand, probably a bit lower from now, but that does not mean that every single seller is going to hit that bid. That's the key. And if we think about one lesson we learned from COVID, is that we did not have a lot of deal volume, right? The market tanked. It's tanked 8 to 12%. That would have fell off a cliff kind of a thing. 8 to 12%. That's not tanking, right? But not a lot of deal volume. A lot of sellers chose not to do those deals and not to hit those bids that were way below. And that's kind of what happens. So as a buyer, you have to look at this. If you can get some leverage, in terms of negotiability, and you can get the place you want without a lot of competition, and you can get a decent deal, that is what the opportunity we're describing.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. If you want to bring it back to the buyer, because what's my takeaway from this chart or these couple charts from we talked about the seller's point of view. The information really is if you're cutting prices, for a townhouse, 4.5%, apartments around the range of 3%. From a buyer, it's one thing to look at where the listing discount is, but that's sales based, and that's going to take a long time to get. So we're not going to get any kind of discount information for right now until probably August at the earliest. So right now, if you're thinking about what you can get, this is probably the best indicator of what you may be able to get on a good day. If you've got a negotiation and you've got some sort of seller competition in your favor, maybe 4.5 to 5% on the townhouse, perhaps 3%. But other than that, it's still tight in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's fantastic advice right there, and insights. Thank you, John, for piling up all that data as always. That is John Walkup. I am Noah Rosenblatt. We are both from UrbanDigs. Don't forget, you guys got questions, we got answers. We have our forum right down here. If you want any of the research notes that we're talking about today, it's going to be right over here in this section. Other than that, this has been your Brooklyn Weekly Market Update. We'll catch you next time.